The First Continental Congress met from September 5th to October 26th, 1774. Patrick Henry of Virginia and Christopher Gadsden of South Carolina arrived believing the colonies already broken from Britain. Henry wanted to use the Congress to set up a new government. Joseph Galloway of Pennsylvania proposed a plan of union. This plan called for the creation of an American Parliament, which would work with the British Parliament. On matters relating to the colonies, each body would have a veto over the other's decisions. The American Parliament would consist of a President-General appointed by the Crown and delegates appointed by the colonial assemblies. Galloway's plan would have kept the British Empire together while allowing the colonies to have some say over their own affairs, including taxation. Congressional conservatives like John Jay and Edward Rutledge supported this plan. However, the plan failed to win approval by a majority of the delegates. Introduction of Massachusetts's Suffolk Resolves split the Congress. The Resolves denounced the Intolerable Acts, and resolved to 1. Boycott British imports, curtail exports, and refuse to use English products. 2. Ignored the punitive measures taken against Massachusetts since the Boston Tea Party. 3. Support a colonial government in Massachusetts free of royal authority until the Intolerable Acts were repealed. And 4. Urge the colonies to raise militia of their own. In one of his less famous rides, Paul Revere delivered a copy of the Resolves to the First Continental Congress, where it was adopted on September 17th as a show of solidarity. To ensure the Resolves were observed, an association was organized with a committee in each colony, similar to the Sons of Liberty. A number of counties in other colonies adopted similar declarations of grievances, including the Mecklenburg Resolves in Charlotte, North Carolina. The approval of the Suffolk Resolves was not all that radical. Similar measures had been used with success during the Stamp Act and Townshend Act. Once again, boycott worked. British imports dropped by 97% by 1775. However, this time the British did not intend to back down. The Congress codified these actions in the Articles of Association, which was approved on October 20th, 1774. Before the Continental Congress approved the Articles, the delegates needed to decide what authority we should concede to Parliament, whether we should deny the authority of Parliament in all cases. Notice the phrasing, the authority of Congress in all cases. Would this Congress agree to a complete or only a partial repudiation of the Declaratory Act? Whether we should allow any authority to it in our internal affairs. Remember Virginia's mandate for colonial self-determination regarding its internal affairs, or whether we should allow it to regulate the trade of the empire, with or without any restrictions. Virginia favored the Navigation Acts, wherein the British controlled colonial commerce by requiring raw materials, especially the tobacco on which its economy was based, be exported to Britain, and excluding all foreign ships from colonial trade. Virginia's delegates realized that its economy would suffer without these assurances. John Rutledge of South Carolina drafted a resolution that combined the South's concern for internal liberty with the North's freedom from British taxation. They are entitled to the immunities and privileges which have been granted to them by royal charters, and to the free and inclusive power of legislation in all cases of taxation and internal policy. They cannot be altered or abridged by any authority but our own respective authority. This language would become Article 4 in the Declaration of Rights of the Colonies. Congress approved the Declaration of Rights on October 14, 1774. The Congress declared, Resolved, 1. That they are entitled to life, liberty, and property, and they have never ceded to any foreign power whatever a right to dispose of either without their consent. Resolved, 2. That our ancestors who first settled these colonies were at the time of their emigration from their mother country entitled to all the rights, liberties, and immunities of free and natural-born subjects within the realm of England. Resolved, 3. That by such emigration they by no means forfeited, surrendered, or lost any of those rights. And the famous fourth article, paragraph 1. Resolved, 4. That the foundation of English liberty and of all free government is a right in the people to participate in their legislative council, and as the English colonists are not represented, and from their local and other circumstances cannot properly be represented in the British Parliament, they are entitled to a free and exclusive power of legislation in their several provincial legislatures, where their right of representation can alone be preserved in all cases of taxation and internal equality, subject only to the negative of their sovereign, in such manner as has been heretofore used and accustomed. Article 4 is a direct repudiation of the Declaratory Act. However, by insisting internal policy remained the privilege of the provincial legislature, the southern colonies had also had their concerns addressed. By protecting all matters of internal policy, slavery was also protected. While most historians have focused only on the provisions of the Articles of Association and paid scant attention, if any, to the Declaration of Rights, the Declaration of Rights addressed the heart of the debate. For the first time, the colonists struck at the heart of British rule. It called for the abolition of the existing relations with Britain. All British relations would relate to the internal activities of the colonies. Article 4 was a major step toward total independence. Historian Merrill Jensen has pointed out, by 1774, the American and British positions on the power of Parliament were irreconcilable. English historian Lawrence Henry Gibson concurred. Here was the real American Revolution. Historian Theodore Draper concluded, the Declaratory Act was the true casus belli, meaning cause of the war, belli meaning war, of the American Revolution. The Declaratory Act of 1766, claiming Parliament had power over the colonies in all cases whatsoever, and the Somerset decision produced the fear that the Southern economy and social conditions built upon slavery were in peril. The Southerners need to insist that Parliament have no control over internal affairs and policies, according to legal historian John Philip Reed, made war inevitable. If the Americans had acknowledged an act as abstract supremacy, Parliament could then have devised a constitutional mechanism to check any threat from the Crown should the colonies provide the Crown with revenue. Who knows what might have happened? Perhaps like Canada, Australia, New Zealand, the colonies that eventually became the United States might have received some kind of home rule or dominion status as a commonwealth. But that didn't happen. On April 18, 1775, the British sent a regiment of redcoats to confiscate the powder and cannon kept at the conquered armory. That night, Paul Revere made that fateful ride. Though unsuccessfully, he was captured. Still others got through with the message, and local militia assembled and gathered at Lexington, where on the morning of April 19, 1775, they confronted the intruders. At nearly the same time, Lord Dunmore, Virginia's royal governor, ordered his Royal Marines to remove the gunpowder from the magazine in Williamsburg to the schooner HMS Magdalen. The First Continental Congress had provided that a Second Continental Congress should meet on May 10, 1775. Virginia held its convention to select its delegates on March 20, 1775, at St. John's Church in Richmond. Dunmore had issued an order against electing delegates to the Congress, but did nothing to prevent the action. It was at this convention Patrick Henry made his famous "Give me liberty or give me death" speech. The convention also passed a resolution calling for forming an armed resistance. On April 20th, the day after Lexington and Concord, Dunmore gave Lieutenant Henry Collins, commander of the HMS Magdalen, a key and issued his orders for the removal of the gunpowder. The militia, under the direction of Patrick Henry, rallied to the scene and demanded that Dunmore return the powder to the arsenal. The governor refused. He feared for his safety and warned the colonists that he would declare all indentured servants, Negroes, or others free that are able and willing to join His Majesty's troops as soon as may be. According to historian John C. Miller, to Virginia, this was nothing more than a call for a race war. Some British authorities agreed with Dunmore's approach. It would be cheaper and easier to end colonial rebellion by encouraging slave uprisings than to send a large military force. Dunmore's actions only confirmed the fears of Southerners. The British would use the colonies for their own purposes, even encouraging slaves to murder their masters. Virginia offered amnesty to slaves who returned and death to those who fought against them. On May 15, 1776, Virginia declared independence from Britain and instructed its delegates to propose that Congress declare independence from Great Britain. On June 7th, Richard Henry Lee made the following motion: Resolved, that these united colonies are, and of right, ought to be free and independent states, that they are absolved from all allegiance to the British Crown, and that all political connection between them and the state of Great Britain is, and ought to be, totally dissolved.